Welcome back. Now for the news in detail. US Senators Chris Van Hollen and Maggie Hassan say they would continue to urge India to lift the curfew in occupied Kashmir. During a visit to Muzaffarabad, the senators said India should release all political prisoners. They also met Azad Kashmir's President Sardar Masood Khan and Prime Minister Raja Farooq Haider. The lawmakers reaffirmed their resolve to remain engaged for the resolution of the Kashmir dispute. Earlier, India barred a US delegation from entering occupied Kashmir. An Indian soldier captured and released by Pakistan in 2016 has quit due to incessant harassment in the force. Chandu Chavan says since the return from Pakistan, he has been harassed and looked at with suspicion. The soldier said he sent the resignation letter to his unit commander in Ahmednagar in Maharashtra state. Pakistan Army captured Chavan 3 years ago when he crossed the LOC and was handed back to India after 4 months. In the United States, 4 people have been killed in a shooting at a bar in Kansas City. Police said 5 other people were wounded during the incident. Details about the motive and whereabouts of the gunmen are still unclear. Local media said a handgun was used during the shooting. The renewed violence comes just weeks after 2 separate shootings in Texas, which left 44 people dead.
A lot of people running outside. Went inside. We found 4 Hispanic males that were deceased inside of the bar. And then we've had 5 other people that were wounded by gunshots, and they were transported to local hospitals.
Meanwhile, North Korea says it does not want to continue nuclear talks unless the United States takes steps to end hostilities. A spokesman for the foreign ministry says there is no way the U.S. would bring alternative plans for their stalled nuclear talks in 2 weeks. The 2 countries were holding working-level talks in Sweden, but they broke down after North Korea walked away. But the United States called the talks good discussions and said the comments by North Korea did not reflect the spirit of their talks. China says it will foster a long-term sound and stable relationship with North Korea. In an interview, Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged to further strengthen bilateral relations with Pyongyang. President Xi said the 2 neighbors have played an important and positive role in maintaining regional peace and stability. In a letter, North Korea's Kim Jong-un said its invincible friendship with China will be immortal and a victory for socialism. North Korea was among the first countries to recognize the People's Republic of China after its independence in 1949. Moving on, a Hong Kong court has rejected a bid to block the government's ban on wearing face masks at protests. Pro-democracy MPs moved the High Court for an immediate injunction against the ban. The MPs argued that the emergency powers bypassed by the legislature and contravened the city's constitution. Meanwhile, clashes have erupted for the 18th consecutive weekend between Hong Kong police and protesters. Police fired tear gas at thousands of protesters, vandalizing subway stations and shops and flash mob rallies across the thrift-torn city. Protesters wore face masks in defiance of emergency laws that have a penalty of up to a year in prison. Majority of the city's subway stations are still closed after a day of unsanctioned marches and flash mob protests. In Iraq, the death toll of people killed in clashes between protesters and police has risen to 100. After the government's clampdown on protesters, Iraqi lawmakers have demanded the government's resignation. Protests over unemployment and corruption have rocked the capital and other Iraqi cities since Tuesday. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry has advised pilgrims to postpone their visits to holy sites in Iraq. Pilgrims from many other countries have also cancelled their visits due to the ongoing violence. Tourists from Pakistan are also being advised to postpone their visits. Iran says Tehran will continue to rescind from the 2015 nuclear deal if other parties do not fulfill their commitments. Atomic body spokesman Behruz Kamalvandi has called for urgent cooperation from EU to reduce danger of nuclear fission. Speaking at an event in Vienna, Kamalvandi said Tehran's cooperation is in line with the postulates of the nuclear accord. He said Tehran is taking the steps after a one-year strategic patience in response to United States pullout and sanctions. Kamalvandi also said the resolve of international community on nuclear disarmament should materialize as a global demand. Moving on, Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson claims his Brexit proposals have picked up support in Parliament. In an interview he wrote for the British media, Johnson said the UK will leave the European Union on the 31st of October, but it's ready for a deal if the EU is willing to do so. Britain and the European Union are due to resume talks on Monday to find a new agreement ahead of a key EU summit on the 17th of October. But the Irish backstop continues to be a sticking point as the EU calls for changes to Johnson's latest Brexit proposals. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said a deal is possible, but current proposals are not enough. Germany's Interior Minister Horst Seehofer has warned of a mass influx of refugees in Europe even bigger than that in 2015. During a visit to Greek islands, Seehofer said the EU has to do more to support Turkey so that refugees do not attempt dangerous crossing to Greece. He said Turkey is doing a great deal in welcoming millions of refugees and Europe has to avoid a crisis for which it is unprepared. Seehofer said he has the support of Chancellor Angela Merkel over the refugees policy. In 2016, the EU agreed to give Turkey nearly $6 billion in aid for projects devoted to Syrian refugees. The 2015 migrant surge was triggered by the war in Syria and Afghanistan, among other conflicts east of the EU. Meanwhile, Portuguese voters are casting their ballots to elect a new parliament. Opinion polls have pointed to the re-election of the ruling Socialist Party, but it's unclear if the Socialists will win enough seats to form a government without a coalition. They currently lead the ruling Geringonça coalition with support from the far-left Eurosceptic parties. Prime Minister Antonio Costa says he wants enough numbers to govern without his Geringonça allies. The Prime Minister's campaign focused on economy and jobs. Unemployment has fallen from almost 14% to 6% under Costa's rule. Kosovo is voting for its fourth parliamentary elections in snap polls after Prime Minister Ramush Haradinaj stepped down in July. Haradinaj resigned after he was summoned before an International Court of Justice for war crimes explanation. There are 5 main contenders competing for the top spot in the elections. Haradinaj was one of the commanders of the Kosovo Liberation Army that fought Serb forces during the independence war. In August, Kosovo's parliament voted to dissolve and snap elections were announced. Kosovo is troubled with corruption, unemployment and deteriorating relations with neighboring Serbia. Tunisians are voting today to elect a new parliament and a prime minister. These are the country's third parliamentary polls after its successful transition to democracy following the 2011 revolution. More than 15,000 candidates are contesting for the assembly of 217 seats. The party that secures over 109 seats in a single round of voting has the right to appoint a prime minister and form a government. Informal surveys show that Muslim Democratic Party and Ennahda will lose ground to the new Qalb Tunes party. The country's economy has struggled since longtime ruler Zain El Abidine bin Ali was removed from power. The elections come 2 weeks after the first round of a presidential election that swept aside traditional political parties. Russia says it will continue to bolster Venezuela's economy despite U.S. sanctions. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov is on a visit to Caracas to highlight Moscow's support for President Nicolas Maduro. Venezuelan Vice President Tariq al-Aissami thanked Moscow for facilitating oil shipments despite U.S. curbs. Borisov also met Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Talking to media after the meeting, Maduro said the two countries have agreed to strengthen bilateral economic bonds.
We have reviewed all the issues and we can say there are new economic ventures with technology, sharing, participation of Russian companies in all areas of strategic production of the country. We have renewed and advanced tremendously throughout the oil, gas and basic businesses.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia says it's working on removing Sudan from the United States list of state sponsors of terrorism. In a tweet, the foreign ministry said Riyadh is also working on initiating investments in Sudan. It said Sudan is supporting the kingdom in international forums. The U.S. named Sudan a state sponsor of terror in 1993. Since then, the Sudanese government has been urging Washington to remove it from the list. 8 people have been killed by a gunman in an attack in northern Rwanda's Volcanoes National Park. Police say 18 others, mostly tourists, were injured in the attack. Tourism spokesman said the terrorists were carrying mainly crude weapons. In a statement, police said the security forces are trying to track down the attackers. The area has repeatedly been targeted by Rwandan rebels operating from the Democratic Republic of Congo. For over a century, Nobel Prizes have served the purposes of rewarding human discovery aimed at improving human life. An exhibition at Nobel Prize Museum showcases all of these achievements. Find more in this report.
The Nobel Prize Museum exhibition showcases Nobel Prize-winning progress. The exhibition deals with environment and climate change, food, digital technology, medicine and humanitarian aid.
The exhibition is called For the Greatest Benefit to Humankind, and it's actually a thing that Alfred Nobel wrote in his will. And we are trying to make an exhibition about what that could be, and think about the past and see what it might end up in the future with.
The show exhibits items such as penicillin, the discovery awarded jointly to Ernst Boris Chain, Alexander Fleming and Howard Walter Florey in 1945. It aims to instill in young people the idea that progress of humankind is based on further knowledge and progress.
I hope that the exhibition will convey the message that change is possible, that discoveries and efforts, human efforts, can really change the direction the world is moving in.
The exhibition also aims at renewing commitment humans have made to their world for the sole purpose of improving humankind.
312 giant pandas reside at a conservation and research center in southwest China. According to latest data, it is the world's largest giant panda group in captivity. This report has more.
Reproduction of captive pandas used to be a challenge, but efforts of a conservation center in China's Sichuan province over the years has paid off. The number of pandas in captivity has increased from 10 at the beginning to over 300 now.
Actually, in an overall perspective, it is a question to improve the level of scientific management, adopt a scientific way of thinking, and raise the pandas with a loving heart. So altogether, we have spent nearly 25 years to completely solve the 3 difficult problems in raising pandas.
The youngest panda cubs in the center are twins born in August this year.
Now the twins are 1 month old and all their physiological parameters are normal.
The pandas at the center account for over 50% of the world's total captive bred panda population.
In a heart-wrenching display of compassion, 6 elephants defied the basic instinct of self-preservation to save members of their herd. The epic incident occurred at Khao Yai National Park's Hai Narak waterfall in northeastern province of Nakhon Ratchasima in Thailand. But the story ended like a Shakespearean tragedy.
Elephants are well known for their intelligence, close family ties, and social complexity. It was a scene to behold as one after the other 5 elephants descended the slippery cliff to rescue a calf. The largest land mammals showed that they had the largest heart.
We understand that the elephants were trying to cross over to the other side of the river. Probably one of the smaller elephants might have slid, and the adults were trying to rescue him, but instead they were swept away by the water.
Talking to the media, officials said 2 elephants were saved in the incident as the waterfall has been closed temporarily.
At the moment, the elephants are taking a break. They're quite tired from trying to cross over from the other side. They're just resting by standing still because they have used up a lot of energy wading through the water stream. I think they should be able to gradually get back up through the same way they went down.
There are around 300 wild elephants in the park, which covers more than 2,000 square kilometers of forest and grassland.
It's time for a short break. Stay tuned with Indus News. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. Well, that's all for now. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.